we don't expand our imagination.
Justification for being what
Welcome to Washington Unplugged. I'm John Dickerson. Some breaking news last night and this morning. A low-level diplomat from Qatar is under investigation after either trying to light his shoe or simply making jokes about it. Also this morning, rescuers at that West Virginia mine have had to be evacuated. Bob Orr is here to give us the latest on both of these stories. Bob, first with that flight, what happened?
This was a crazy thing, John. I mean, it's very hard to make any sense out of it, and it's been written off as a joke, but it really was very serious. This plane takes off from Washington Reagan National Airport with more than 150 people on board. It's bound for Denver. Somewhere along the way in the flight, a man gets up in the first class section. He goes to the forward lavatory. When he comes out, sources say a flight attendant smelled some smoke. He was approached by a couple of federal air marshals on the plane, and they started talking to him. Well, apparently at some point in this conversation, when they were trying to find out what happened, either he tried to make a joke or he made some kind of flippant remark about maybe setting his shoes on fire, which is a not too subtle reference to the 2001 Richard Reed shoe bombing attempt. In any case, he was detained. They've been talking to him through last night and this morning. He will not be charged. It's now being kind of written off as a misunderstanding and a mistake, but this was a big deal. 2 F-16s were scrambled. There were some very, very tense moments, and the whole security apparatus of the government was stood up just to find out in the end that this really was the worst kind of false alarm.
And they tell you when you check in at airports, if you're just a civilian, not to make any jokes at the screening, or you'll get busted. In this case, obviously he's a diplomat of some sort, and they've just moved past that.
Yeah, he's not going to be charged. We talked to the FBI this morning. No one's interested in pressing any kind of charges. We have to reiterate, this was not a terrorist event. This was not an attack. This just was some very bad judgment and then some salty language. And in the end, this caused quite a big scare last night.
Okay, Bob. Now, what's up with the mine? They've now had to evacuate the rescuers going in to try and find those miners.
I wish we had some better news on that. This morning, a team of mine rescue workers went into the Upper Big Branch mine down there in West Virginia, hoping to reach the area where they hope to find 4 miners still alive. We do know there are 18 miners still underground who are confirmed to be dead. But in any case, as they're working their way down the shaft, mine officials say that explosive gases once again build up. It became too dangerous, high risk of explosion. So now the rescue team has had to be pulled out. There's still another drill hole being bored down through the mountain trying to vent those explosive gases. And if that can be done this afternoon, they may again try to send the rescue team in again later today. But all the while, the clock is ticking. And I have to be honest and say that hopes for these 4 miners really are very, very grim right now.
Okay, Bob Orr, thanks very much for getting us up to speed on all of that. And now to the Republican Party. Its prominent politicians are gathered in New Orleans, but in Washington, stories about the party leadership continue to suggest disarray. Politico's deputy political editor, Ken Vogel, and publisher of the Daily Caller, Neil Patel, are here to talk about the grand old party. Neil, I want to start with you. You all have put together a story here advancing yet another potential problem for Michael Steele. Tell us about it. It has to do with a fundraising swap with Michigan.
Yeah, John, the basic story is that the Republican Party under Michael Steele and the chairman of the GOP in Michigan came up with a deal whereby apparently $500,000 would get transferred to the RNC from high-dollar Michigan donors and then be shuffled right back to Michigan. If that's true, that could be a violation of federal funding requirements where you can only transfer $10,000 because each of the donors who did this transferred $30,000. The records do show that a massive amount of money, just about 500, was transferred on the very last day of last year, and then $250,000 was transferred back to Michigan in each of the successive months. And a former RNC official tells the Daily Caller that was all part of a deal between Steele and the Michigan chairman.
And this is to pump up Steele's numbers to make it so that he can say, and he's had some pretty good numbers in terms of fundraising. He's been nailed and criticized for his spending, but on the fundraising front, he's done pretty well. This presumably was in an effort to bump up those numbers, be able to say we've raised a whole lot of money here. So he could be, in this case, in legal trouble.
I don't know exactly. The law in this is all very complicated, but yes, it seems like there could be legal trouble with it. And yeah, the goal, if this is all true, as our source is indicating, then the goal would be for the RNC to show bigger numbers than they really have. If all you're doing is funneling money through, then when you put out a number like 90 million, how much of that is real and how much of that is sort of part of games like this would raise questions about that. But as of now, the RNC has not commented. They have not said what the money was for. They've not said why it went in and out so quickly, so we just don't know.
Okay. Ken, I want to turn to you and ask you, Steele has had a number of problems. This is just the latest. But as a kind of bit of a reality check, is he going anywhere? I mean, is there any way to move him along, and how serious is the chatter among Republicans on that front?
I think it's highly unlikely that we would see him leave before his term is up. There, of course, will be a regularly scheduled election for chairman after the November 2010 midterm elections. Wouldn't be surprised to see him leave then. Would be surprised to see him leave before then. There simply isn't the will or really the mechanism that some of these folks within the RNC who are unhappy with him can use to oust him, and he shows absolutely no signs of loosening his grips on the chairmanship there. One of the things that is interesting, that sort of Neil's story and the Daily Caller story brings to light, is that there are, the RNC is very important for these coming 2010 midterm elections because it has such broad latitude to make transfers like this, to coordinate with state parties, to coordinate with individual candidates. And we hear a lot of talk about some of these organizations outside of the RNC sort of stepping up to fill the void, to raise money from the donors who were disaffected by some of these troubles at the RNC, and to kind of fill the gap here and marginalize the RNC. But that's not a net wash by any means. The RNC has broad latitude as to how it can work with candidates and parties, and it being unable to raise substantial sums of money, or at least being unable to clear substantial sums of money without spending a lot to raise a lot, will really hurt Republicans in 2010 and beyond.
And there have been stories that the Republican Party is not going to be able to compete in all of the possible races. Things are going well for Republicans in other ways, and that the RNC doesn't have the money to compete in those races. Is that the danger here? I mean, how much, give me your sense in terms of nuts and bolts, how much of a danger the party's in with this election coming up?
I mean, it's a big danger because though the electoral landscape certainly seems to favor Republicans at this point, and we have experts predicting not just double-digit gains in the House, but possibly even at the margins Republicans being able to retake the House of Representatives. So the sort of absence of a well-funded, well-oiled national party could be significant, because even as the National Republican Congressional Committee, the National Republican Senatorial Committee have stepped up and have in some ways benefited from the RNC stumbles, they are sort of structurally unable to be as potentially powerful and helpful to these candidates as the RNC could be were it functioning well and were it free of some of these controversies that have really hampered it.
Do you have a sense of who Steele's base is, and how much that he can sort of get past this? He says he's not going to leave anywhere. Republicans have some things to rally around. So who's his base, and what could they use to distract themselves from this kind of thing in terms of just delineating the advantages Republicans have in this election year?
Well, he certainly brought in a lot of loyalists with him to the RNC, actually within the building, and they've rallied around him even as some have left or been cast out. He's sort of brought in just a sort of fresh wave of loyalists, or promoted a fresh wave of loyalists to kind of circle the wagons here. But where the real issue comes in is with donor maintenance. I mean, the RNC, the national parties it's totally an inside game. It's not, you're not trying to reach out and, have the party chairman. The party chairman's primary role is not to rally support among voters for Republicans. It's to take care of donors, to raise money, and to stay out of trouble, frankly. And so the fact that he's unable to do that latter is affecting the former, his ability to raise money and sort of keep a good relationship with these donors, and that could potentially be very problematic for the Republican Party headed into the 2010 midterms.
And what's your take on that, Keith?
I think he's got basically two bases in his role as chair. His base are the Republican committee people around the country. They're the ones who vote him in. They're the ones who could vote him out. I think he's doing pretty well with that group, at least what they're saying publicly. And then his other base to accomplish his role, which is largely to raise funds, are the high donor Republican fundraisers out there. And in that area, I think he has been hurting. Mm-hmm. The money, they've raised a lot of money, most of it from smaller donations. There's a lot of wind at the sails right now for Republicans. He's benefited from that in their online fundraising and other smaller donation level fundraising. But the large donor money that has traditionally come into the RNC has been going to the NRSC, the Senate Campaign Committee, and the NRCC more than usual. So in that area, he's got some trouble.
Okay, thanks very much, gentlemen, for helping us sort through all of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Countdown to Zero, a film that makes the case for nuclear disarmament. It's been screened by a host of administration officials, including Secretary Clinton, and it opens in U.S. theaters in July. Welcome. Let's first, we had a historic signing between the American and Russian president today, but let's first get to the film, which is, give me the premise for the film.
Sure. Well, Countdown to Zero is a terrifying, edge-of-your-seat, eye-opening kind of wake-up call about the urgent threat posed by terrorism, proliferation, and the accidental use of nuclear weapons. And it has a great group of people, and it has Tony Blair, President Musharraf, President Gorbachev, President Carter, President de Klerk from South Africa, members of the CIA, Valerie Plame. I mean, it's a really amazing group of people. We screened the movie in Sundance a couple of months ago, and as you said, it's coming out in July.
One of the things in this agreement today, the film makes a distinction between sort of nuclear weapons as we thought about them during the Cold War and this new threat.
That's right.
Today's signing had a sort of antiquated feel to it. It felt like something from the 70s. How big a deal was that?
It's a really big deal. Like everything, you need to start somewhere. And this is the greatest reduction in strategic nuclear arms in a generation. And next week, as you know, the president's convening 47 heads of states. By the way, Washington is going to be pretty locked down with 47 motorcades going around. But they're going to talk about securing all nuclear materials worldwide. The president's got a 4-year plan to do that. And as a Global Zero member, we support the president in this, and we urge the leaders coming into D.C. to adopt his plan.
But if it's the terrorist and these kind of the big state actors the president's dealing with, that's one piece of the pie. But what you're talking about is a little bit harder to track. You won't see it going away at a signing ceremony.
Absolutely. But you have to start somewhere. So the plan that we have, the Global Zero Commission has put together, which is very much in alignment with where the president is heading, is you have to start somewhere. So at first, Russia and the United States have signed a bilateral agreement to reduce their nuclear weapons. They're going to start right into another agreement, hopefully right after that. And the idea is that as the United States and Russia reduce their nuclear arms, then the rest of the world can then also get involved in starting to slowly reduce on a verifiable, intrusive level. What happens is ultimately the only way to really stop a terrorist, who, by the way, can buy a bomb, steal a bomb, how can you stop them from doing that, is to get rid of them all, to get rid of all the bombs, and to get rid of the material that they can use to make a bomb.
In making this case, you have a problem, which is that most people kind of think that signing ceremonies take care of this. This is something from the past. I wonder if you can give me your sense of the Bush administration, who during the lead up to the Iraq War, one of the things they said was, if we don't do something now, we'll have a mushroom cloud. The clear point there was, it seems to be in line with what you're talking about, which is a terrorist will get nuclear material and will have a nuclear event. Is that similar to the case you're making, or different?
Yeah, unfortunately, of course, the former administration was wrong, of course, and there weren't nuclear weapons in Iraq. But that's kind of besides the point. We're at sort of what could be called the nuclear tipping point right now. For instance, if Iran acquired a nuclear bomb, then you'd have other countries in the region that might feel forced to get them as well. And all of a sudden, it's game over. Right now, there's about 40 countries in the world who, if they decided today they wanted one, within about a year, they could produce it. They're all nuclear capable. They've decided not to. And we have countries that have given them up. Like we talk about in the movie, President de Klerk from South Africa decided to give up. He had about 6 Hiroshima-sized bombs that they gave up. When Russia fell apart, in a sense, and Kazakhstan, Ukraine, and one of them losing track of, I was talking to Secretary James Baker. Through sticks and carrots, they gave up the nuclear weapons.
What about these, North Korea and Iran? The old argument is, look, we can't give up anything because we're never going to be able to convince Iran and North Korea. What does your film say about that?
That's right. Well, you would have to be naive to say, of course, that you would want to unilaterally give up your weapons if a country like Iran acquired it or North Korea didn't give them up. So the point is not, we would never want to advocate something like that. Obviously, our national security is of the highest importance. The idea, though, is, and there's a commission of greater minds than mine who have put this together, and they're backed by former presidents, national security advisors, military leaders, and the such, and quite a few of them, that have put a plan together that deals with monitoring systems, verification systems. And again, it is a slow process of reducing our nuclear arsenals. Starting with the Russia and the United States, we own over 90% of the weapons around the world. And then once we get down to a level of 1,000 or so, then a country like China might say, okay, they'd be interested in getting involved because the pressure now is going down. Before, the pressure was going up. We, with MAD, mutually assured destruction, United States and Russia were increasing our arsenals. Then China decided, well, of course, they needed to. And we can reverse that cycle.
Okay, Lawrence Bender, thanks very much. The film is Countdown to Zero, and it comes out in July. Thanks all of you for watching Washington Unplugged. Join us here each day at 12:30 on CBSNews.com. I'm John Dickerson. Have a great day.
If we don't expand our imagination,
Justification for being what you are.